Core TV News, expanding your view.
Welcome back. It's been Core Digest, and I have been discussing with Tunde Kolawole, a legal practitioner, on the ending of the national conference. What next? And we have been talking about some other fundamental issues that you raised that are supposed to have been discussed that have not been discussed. Now, the conference has ended. There will be no more discussions. Now, for what has been discussed so far, I knew the issue of referendum came up and all that. Do we see the discussions being subjected to a referendum, or that's where it ends, or what next?
Yeah, maybe before we really go into that, let me quickly end this our discussion on the core issue that we couldn't really finish before the station took on the news. They look at the issue of resource control. That was another fundamental issue that the conference was unable to resolve one way or the other. I personally don't believe in resource control, but I think an august gathering such as that should have been able to speak more bluntly and be more realistic in the way and manner they have addressed the issue of resource control. My take is that any resources that is not created by man shouldn't be controlled by anybody. If we allow certain people to control the oil in their backyard, then sooner than later people will insist on controlling the granites that they find in their backyard, because granite is also a national resource. People will also begin to say they want to control rivers that pass through their villages and towns and all that. To that extent, I should think that people should, but we should have the courage to say it the way it is. Yes, I agree that the environment that is being degraded, being polluted in those places, we should, for God's sake, put some attention in there and not leave the environment the way it is. Be that as it may, we have not really addressed the issue the way and manner it should be addressed. Now, talking about a referendum, I should say that I don't see this government having the courage to really subject what has happened at that conference to a referendum, in the sense that the people in the National Assembly will be so angry with the presidency that they will see it as an usurpation of their responsibility as a national assembly, especially when they are already trying to amend the constitution. That is one. The second one is subjecting it to referendum may not be too pleasing to certain sections of the country. You and I were watching the news today, and you saw how Jubril, the former Minister for Education, was speaking for the North, not speaking for Nigeria, that they have come to the conference to defend the interests of the North. Due to that is how the average Udumakin will also think.
Now, where is this taking us?
So the referendum is not likely to...
Where is this going to take us when after the conference, where everyone is expectant that the unity of Nigeria, the entity of Nigeria will be more solidified, regions and religions de-emphasized, and tribes and religions, and Nigeria more emphasized, and right at the brink of the end of the conference, we have people still speaking for regions and still speaking for a particular entity and not Nigeria as a whole. Where is it going to take us?
I don't see the conference taking us far or taking us anywhere. I suspect, like the president has given us a feeler when he was inaugurating the conference, that they will just merely pass the recommendations of the conference of the National Assembly to be incorporated into the amendment that they are already trying to do. And it could also be that the conference will just end in one public servants or one civil servants cupboard to gather dust like most of the past conferences that we have done, because I also see a lot of controversy coming from this conference, because you and I do know the conference is not conclusive. What they have simply done is to say that they are passing the final draft of the conference to the Secretariat and hoping that the Secretariat would be able to reflect the opinions of all the members as they have, that they have been able to do. But you and I do know by the time the Secretariat is dotting the T's and crossing the I's and all that, a lot of things could also happen. So just an extent that certain people will say, that was not what we decided. That was not what we asked you to do. And by the time
But they were able to go through the draft.
they
to
did,
ensure
a draft is different from the final thing. If they were going to stay away from controversy, it is the final thing that they should put on the table, and which everybody who has participated in that conference will sign, will put his signature on, and not leave the final thing to the secretariat to do. By the time you leave to the secretariat to do, you are indirectly paving the way or laying the foundation for very, very serious controversy as regards the final draft that is going to get to Mr. President's hand.
Okay, let's look at this issue, the draft constitution and proposed amendment. I think that was what caused the rancor before it was finally resolved. What is the difference between these two?
Well, a draft constitution is like a proposal, while the draft constitution is like a proposal. It's not the final thing. But when you do the final things, when you probably have subjected to the referendum, or you take it to the National Assembly, and then the National Assembly passes it as a constitutional amendment. Whereas the one that generated controversy will be such that the National Assembly cannot alter it. It will just be passed like that, the way it's been debated and adopted by the National Conference. That is the way the National Assembly would have passed it. But with the ones they have agreed on now, the National Assembly could still do a lot of tinkering with it. The presidency could still do a lot of tinkering with it. And then when they have done the final thing could be subjected to a referendum if they would have the courage to do that. But I suspect strongly the National Assembly will never tolerate that. And the presidency may now have the courage to really subject it to a referendum.
So
that is,
now this goes to the National Assembly.
It definitely is likely to end up in the National Assembly. And you and I do know that the people in the National Assembly, they have the same mindset as the people that you have in that conference. They are either speaking for the Yorubas or speaking for the Hausa Fulani or speaking for their different constituencies that they hardly visit when they even have the vacations from the National Assembly. It's the same mindset. And you and I also do know that the National Assembly is not the representative of the people as such, in the sense that the National Assembly is dominated by a particular political party, which is the PDP at the end of affairs.
They were elected by the people?
Yes, they were elected. Elected not as representing the people per se, but you know when you go to the polling booth to vote, what do you see on the polling ballot? Is it not the logos of the different political parties? So if it is the logo that you are voting for, you are indirectly voting for a party program. You are voting for a party program.
Which you believe.
Yes, it's likely to be able to influence or transform your life, or will give you the dividend of democracy, to also say. You know? But the program that is being canvassed by the PDP is different from what the APC, for example, is canvassing, or even from what the Labour Party is expected to stand for in the society. So, taking the draft to the National Assembly, my take is that the people in the National Assembly are also likely to be viewing it from the partisan perspective, and also from regional perspective, and also from religious perspective, which is not going to be too good for us. Whereas, if we had had a situation in which we had the kind of situation that we had before 1979, in which people would say, look, we want a new constitution. Let people who are interested in going to the Constitutional Conference submit nominations, and then people from the different constituencies would vote for them. And when you win the election, you go to the district, you know you have the mandate of the people. In between, too, you will select some professionals like lawyers who would make inputs, who will be at that kind of constitutional conference. You also have medical doctors, people represent different backgrounds and all that, because there are certain things that have to be looked at from professional perspective. And when such people who are elected, and a handful of people representing diverse sectors of the society that are not totally covered in the election that are conducted in the different constituencies, will go in there and then they come out with a better draft. That was why you had a 1979 constitution, which by and large, very few people have been able to fault in terms of its wide acceptance all over the country.
Now, do you see Nigeria coming out stronger after this national conference? Now it's ended. Do you see Nigeria coming out stronger than it has been?
I have my doubts. I have my doubts. To the extent that it's been able to doubt the tension in the land for now, he has soon, I mean, 2015 is approaching. As we get closer to 2015 election, and the tension in the land will come back. I foresee a lot of big part, a lot of hype, and a lot of a crying wolf where there is a none. It's just that, for me, it's been able to quieten the tension in the land for now. But like I said, as 2015 approaches, the tension will go back in there. I don't see this becoming a magic wand that will just solve all the fundamental problems, all the fundamental challenges that really trying to unravel this country as a nation.
What about the implementation of those issues that has been raised and debated on by the delegates at the conference?
Yeah. Ordinarily, if we have a government that has spine, so to say, I'm sorry to use the word, if you have a government that has a spine and all that, you could begin to implement very robustly some of the recommendations that have been made by that national conference. But I don't see this government having the quality to be able to do that, in the sense that the government is too sensitive to the next election.
These issues were discussed by Nigerians from different parts and agreed upon by the majority in the House. So why wouldn't it be put in place?
Well, basically because these people think, like I said, like politicians first, before remembering that they're supposed to be statesmen.
Okay, let's take this call from Chimere Eze, calling from Imo State, before we continue. Chimere, can you hear us?
If it is possible, I would have suggested that the outcome of this conference should not be taken to the National Assembly, because most of them, as the man there is saying, most of them they have their political affiliation will not allow them to say the truth and to treat this thing how it should be. This thing should be taken as it is and put into our constitution, so it become an amendment. Because these people in this National Assembly, they are partisans, they represent different people. And when you go there, they're talking about religion, politics, and all this. And PDP, they are the ones of the National Assembly. So whatever we take there, PDP will have to carry the day there, which is not good for Nigeria. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Chimere Eze from Imo. His opinion is that it shouldn't go to the National Assembly. It should be taken as his discourse and put into the Constitution. Look at it as an amendment. You are a legal practitioner.
Yeah, there are a lot of challenges to doing that. On what basis are you going to do that? What law are you going to use to back that up? You probably will see after. There's no way you can bypass the National Assembly. If you want to, you could send a law to the National Assembly and say, look, we are sending this draft constitution that has been passed by the National Conference to you for debate, adoption, and then whatever. Or you call for an outright referendum from the people. And I'm saying, if you call for an outright referendum, I don't see the people in the National Assembly accepting that. Because one, they will see it as undermining their authority. In the sense, you are indirectly saying that their stay in the National Assembly is is useless. That they have no job doing there. Secondly, the way the draft is today, I'm not too sure that it will be appealing to all the different sections of the country. I see somebody like Yinka Odumaki and all that, some of the comments and some of the things put in the paper and all that. It appears to me that the Yoruba, the myopic Yoruba agenda that somebody like him took to that conference has not been realized. So, ditto for some of these other people. And look at, for example, the state that they have said should be created. Are you sure that by the time you really want to create that, you want to begin to implement the creation of those states, that is not likely to cause fire in this country? Because I know there's a lot of people who really don't agree on the proposal to really create some of those states. Yes, people in the East who feel they have been shortchanged in terms of state creation would want to see that as a leeway to really getting the state that they have always wanted. But I also do know there are certain people in Yoruba, especially the Ijebu people, for example, who are saying that out of all the different provinces of the olden days, that Ijebu is the only one that has not become a state ever since then. And they will want to see an Ijebu state being created. I'm also aware that my own people, who are the Igbomina people in Kwara State, also want to stay. They will want to see a situation with the Igbomina people, with the people in Ilan or Ogun, who are also Igbomina, and people in Kogi State, who are Yoruba, become a state.
Are all these people not reflected in the 18 new states?
No, they are not. They are not. I'm not too. They are. Some are not. I'm not aware that they intend to create an Igbomina state, for example. I'm not aware of that. Whereas our people who have also said they want to.
Maybe that has not been taken to the conference.
Yeah, it was taken. You see, being at the conference too, you really all animals sometimes are not equal when it goes to issue. Some at that conference than the other. Some are vocal. Some have the capacity to really lobby to get whatever they wanted. And I'm not too sure that the Igbomina people, for example, had the kind of cloud that would have gotten them a state in that kind of a conference. So these are going to be very, very serious challenges.
Okay, let's
booby traps that have been built.
Let's take this call and then we have a caller from Ibadan. Landry, are you there with us?
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning, Landry. Thank you for calling.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, go ahead with your contribution.
My point of view that this opportunity is here to pass and the root of our resources. I have to be corrected. Do we really have a back of this constitution, this as well? Because I remember, to my best of knowledge, there is no tax law that backs this up. That is not young.
Well, sorry, Larry, you have to call us back. The line seems not to be very clear. So call us back. Probably it will be clear at the end because I'm struggling to get what he is saying. Now, let's look at it critically. After this conference, expectedly, we should be talking Project Nigeria. But issues that has to do with the regions and sections of the country are still in the forefront. Why is it that the conference didn't come up with issues that reflects, okay, this is the decision to be in Nigeria, this is decision taken for the good of the country, and you see seeing decisions taken to push agendas of regions and tribes and sections of the country?
Yeah, I do remember that Professor Nwabueze and a few of them planned or had muted the idea that they will go to the conference and then begin to reorganize Nigeria along 8 geographical zones, so to say. But as soon as some of these people go to the conference and all, you discover that voice of trying to break the country into certain regions and other really didn't fly. In fact, that voice was totally muffled at that conference.
Now, is it breaking into regions or of uniting the country and let Nigerians begin to talk as Nigerians?
As Nigerians.
So that I stop talking like a Yoruba man and I talk like a Nigerian.
Exactly. That is what one would have expected. That is what one would have expected. But sadly enough, that didn't come to pass. And like I said, the reason it didn't come to pass is because people who are at that conference are highly partisan. And when you are highly partisan, you hardly can see issues from very, very objective perspective. You also find out that most of the people at that conference are highly conservative people, old people. You know, and when you have people who are that conservative and who are old, who still have the mindset of the 60s and the 50s and other, they can't make clear projections into the future. Yes, you have an Odumaki, you're still talking like a 70-year-old man and all that. You also have some other younger elements in the place who you think should be vibrant, who should see what is happening in the different parts of the world and then try to bring that into Nigeria. But lo and behold, they were polluted, they have been contaminated with the conservatism of these older people that we have in the place. I have given you an example that if we went to that conference and said, look, the challenge facing this country is that of resource control. I mean, it's that of allocation of resources, but not the way and manner some of these people want it allocated. We say we have the challenges of unemployment. In what way can we stimulate the economy so as to be able to create employment for the millions of Nigerian people and youths that we turn out from the secondary school, polytechnics and university on an annual basis who are not finding a job. You probably will say, yes, we need to build a modern railway, such as they do have in China. The fastest railway that they have in China today, we also want to build it in Nigeria. And now when we build the modern railway, we are likely to generate this kind of jobs and all that. We also have the challenges of corruption, because corruption is created about 70% of the problem that we do have. When there are no drugs in the hospital and the governor will say he wants 100 million as a retirement benefits for his medical allowance alone, if he alone takes 100 million, where will you get the resources to begin to equip hospitals in the different states of the federation? If a governor will say when he retires and know that they should build 3 or 4 houses for him in different parts of the country, where will the resources be freed to be able to develop schools?
Hello, good morning.
If, for example, at that conference, the people say, we have recognized that the corruption is the bane of this society, creating almost 70% of the problem, we are recommending to the National Assembly that they should pass a law to make corruption a capital offense in this country. I am sure that will be very, very useful to all of us as a nation. But nobody mentioned that, because all of them are corrupt, or most of them, so to say, as a lawyer, I should be very careful with the use of words. Some of them are corrupt.
Okay, now
They never had the
let's
courage
look
to
at
say
the
that.
analogy of age that you put forward.
Okay.
Isn't it supposed to be, like it's been said generally in Nigeria, the older generation should be full of wisdom to be able to chart a better course for the future of Nigeria? Now,
That is what we all thought. That is what we all thought. Ordinarily, age is not a crime. It's not a sin to be old. In fact, when people grow old, they are supposed to be repository of wisdom. They are also supposed to be able to look at issues from the ambience that they, of experience, so to say. Take, for example, somebody like Chief Richard Kinjide.
Okay, we'll come back to that, but let me take this call from Oludare. We'll come back to the age issue. Oludare from Port Harcourt, are you still there? Hello, Oludare.
Hello.
Hello, go ahead with your contribution. We can hear you.
The man, the just on the screen, is now talking the normal comment is supposed to make during the conference. But all this was not there when the conference was on. But when people there talking transatlantically, people from the northern go against the other part, each and every one of them, one of them speaking for their own goals and their own picture. But now Nigeria can never achieve the end that we had Nigeria. Now it came to this man comes to studio now, speaking what's supposed to be what he's supposed to mention. Now people, I was watching this on AIC when the conference was on. The man was trying to even bring ideas that we have people. They were due to be there, and the man, the chairman, he did not even allow him to define himself. So he can't achieve any progress. He can't with all the systems they have already enumerated in that conference. So the problem of Nigeria, we know the next picture now. You are after the end of this conference now. The moderator are asking what's the next. He's asking it to just go to the policy. So I raise my case, sir.
All right, thank you for that contribution, Oludare. and he's like saying crying over spilled milk. So
Yes,
having a
yes.
discussion that will not have an impact because
A lot
the
of people
conference
would
is
have
ended.
a lot of people would have been disappointed. I mean, look at the resources that was put into it. Look at the energy. Look at the time. Look at the hype. And only to come out with a draft that is neither here nor there, and a draft that you are also not too sure how it's likely to end. Is it going to end at the executive table, or is it going to go to the National Assembly and then they begin to doctor it? That they have always doctored all previous documents that have always been between them. The suggestions I would do, I do have is that we require to have a lot of young people go into politics in the professions all over the country,
Now,
in the east, in the
how will the
west,
young
and all that.
people how will the young people get there? When because we are just making an analogy of the age when the older generation is supposed to provide wisdom, but we all know that in the recent past, the youth have come up to challenge even the election and appointment of youth leaders in some political parties have been outside the age bracket of the youth. So, like someone will say said to me jokingly in the past. So they said they are the future leaders. So when will the youth ever have the opportunity to be the leaders of tomorrow?
I totally agree with you that it's a very daunting task to really get some of the young people to begin to make impact at the national level, at the state level, and politically generally. And the reasons is not far-fetched. Look at the quantum of resources that you now require to be effective in the field of politics. Even under the electoral law, to contest as a governor, they are prescribing there that you need about 400 million naira or thereabout. Senate 20 million, and then the presidency almost 1 billion naira. That is a recognition that will require enormous resources to be effective politically. How many of the young persons who have ideas, who are vibrant, who want to make a difference in the lives of their people can really muster that kind of resources to be effective politically? Look at Osun that we just had, the governorship election that we just had. Look at what happened in a place like Lagos State too during the last gubernatorial election. In Osun State, there are about 20 candidates who vied for the governorship seat. And at the end of the day, we're hearing the voice of only about 2 of them. And these are not necessarily the best candidates among the 20 contestants and all that. But you see, the other candidates are not hard simply because they didn't have the resources to be able to power their ambition. And that was what has made a difference. So when you have the young people to really go into the arena of politics and flesh it and slug it out with the established politicians and all that, is a very daunting task. But you see, all hope is not lost, in the sense that sometimes when people make the efforts, you never know what help will come from certain quarters. And 2, resources, money, is not the end of it all. If it was resources, somebody like Oshiomhole, for example, would probably not have made it to the government house. But certain people saw some merits in his candidacy and then began to invest in him. You remember the joke that when he was contesting with the president, Yaradua, who was a PDP man, was funding Oshiomhole's campaign as against the PDP candidate, Professor Osunbo, who was, I can't remember his name clearly now, who was also contesting. That is to say, Yaradua, as even against his own candidate, recognized the merit in Oshiomhole's candidacy and was funded. So it's not impossible that there could be some divine intervention coming from somewhere. Again, the step that the youth can take to be able to make a difference, or to be able to break these shackles or barrier, is to begin to campaign for demonetization of politics. We must be able to demonetize politics so that the average person who doesn't have serious, big resources can be effective politically. And how do you demonetize it? We can say, for example, that when candidates are contesting, we prescribe the maximum amount of money that they can invest in their campaign. And when they are investing in this campaign and all that, they must subject the expenditure to scrutiny. I know it's in the Electoral Act today, but INEC, it could be controlled. It could be controlled. We could also make it a law that when people are contesting, for example, we restrict the medium of campaign. You know?
So let's see, before this conference was put together, I know there are procedures that were put. Why didn't people come up to agitate that we should have, because we're talking about the future of Nigeria, a quite bigger than it presently had percentage of youth represented in that conference? Because I know there were outcries of the age that so many old people were there.
Yes, see, when people in government or civil servants are taking actions, they always contemplate their actions very, very thoroughly. They always contemplate their action. I have the strong suspicion that if people allow certain people to get to that conference, the outcome of the conference they might not be able to control. We have seen instances in some countries of the world in which government in power wanted to use a conference to really rubber stamp his own agenda, his own programs and all that. And lo and behold, before they know it, the conference goes out of their hands, and then the conference begins to dictate the agenda and the direction in which the society is moving. Because of that, you find that most of the people at that conference were consciously selected by the government that inaugurated or that they established the conference. They know the kind of people they wanted there and the kind of people they would not want to see there. For example, look at the Radical Society. It was not represented. I would have wanted to see somebody like Eduma Dunagu, who all these years has been writing in the Guardian, has been speaking and saying he wanted to see a socialist society and all that. No matter how stupid his ideas might be and all that, if such a person was at the conference and all that, you could be sure he will be bringing new perspectives to our understanding of the challenges that is facing the Nigerian nation. We also didn't see a person like Balarabe Musa in that place. These are the radical elements. Almost of the people you find there are conservative politicians, and then aspiring conservative politicians who are used but talking like septuagenarians. So I think it is a very conscious design to really keep away certain people, especially the younger element who may have radical ideas and radical thoughts as regards our society or the direction in which the society should be moving. These civil servants and politicians never do anything that they might not be able to control the outcome. Look at the little challenges they have in their hands, all sorts of manipulations here and there, and let's see the end result.
Now, the conference has ended, actually. Yeah. So when we are talking about the future, what next? What is it going to bring? You were doubtful that it was going to subject it to a referendum. Yes. And you were also talking about being doctored by the National Assembly. So
even the executive arm of government.
So now, where has this left us? Now, as we begin to round up, where has this left us?
Well,
maybe in simpler forms, the Nigeria before the conference, and now the Nigeria after the conference.
Well, Nigeria before the conference had a lot of problems, a lot of challenges that all of us thought if we had a conference of this nature, some of those problems will be discussed, and then we'll be able to find solutions to them. Sadly enough, most of us are disappointed that the fundamental issues, the fundamental challenges, the conference has not been able to address. But like I said in my opening statements, the conference, at least to a large extent, has been able to douse the tension that we had before that conference. I should also think that among the warning lights in the country, whether it be Yoruba, Hausa, or Fulani and other, they've gone to that conference and find out among themselves that their aspirations is not too different. The aspiration of the Yoruba allies, the aspiration of the Igbo allies, the aspiration of the Hausa, Fulani allies and other is not totally different. Whereas before the conference, all of them have always thought that they were working in the different directions and other. For the aspiration of the Nigerian people, certainly those aspirations have not been addressed, and I don't see it being addressed. So, the aftermath, I suspect, yes, enlightenment have been created. A few things could be taken from the report of that conference and incorporated into the constitutional amendment that the National Assembly is putting up now. The thing really is that election is coming 2015, and that is the beauty of democracy. If you feel aggrieved about certain political parties and their programs, you go to the polls at the next election and vote for a different political candidate. In Nigeria today, either recognized or not recognized, there are about 40 or 45 different political parties. Out of these different political parties and other, the voters have the opportunity to choose from, select and say, look, I have tried this party for its policies and programs, I've not been better off. Let me invest my vote in this or that different political. That is how the society will grow. That is how the society will continue to improve. That is how we can begin to make a difference in our life. Even though I'm going to throw cold water into certain people that countries hardly develop under democracy. Go and check all over the world. What develops a nation is visionary leadership, investment in education, and a vigilant population. And sadly enough, all these three things are lacking in Nigeria today.
Okay, so as we round up, what will be your rating of the conference?
I will
In
just
percentage?
give a 30% pass mark. 30% pass mark. And I must say I am a lot disappointed with the performance of people like Chief Richard Akinjide, whom we think should have, because there is hardly anything he has said or hardly anything he has written that I have not read. And I thought he would have taken all those into the national conference and be able to make a difference in the debates that really took place.
All right,
in that place.
it's a very low mark there by you
not more
for
than
the
30%.
national conference.
Not more than 30%.
And we'll round up on this note because our time is up. We want to appreciate you for making yourself available.
Thank you
to
for
be
having
on
me.
Core Digest. Thank you Tunde for coming. We have been discussing the end of the national conference. What next? And our guest has been Tunde Kolawole, a legal practitioner. This is where we wrap it up on Core Digest today. Tomorrow will be another day when interesting and topics that are making the news around the country will be discussed in depth. Do keep a date with us on that program. I am Martins Dixon. Enjoy the rest of your day.
The deadly Ebola virus is again spreading in West Africa. The virus has fatality rates of up to 90%, meaning many who contract the disease die. A subcontinent have witnessed over 900 deaths. Please help prevent the spread of Ebola by observing the following precautions. This is a social responsibility awareness campaign of Core TV News.